U.S. debt default inevitable, only one way to stop it. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. U.S. debt default inevitable, only one way to stop it. David Lynn, the 3rd of November 2024. In the ever-evolving landscape of the U.S. economy, one topic looms over discussions like a dark cloud: the potential for a debt default. According to John Deaton, managing partner of Deaton Law Firm and Senate candidate for Massachusetts, this scenario is not only possible, it's becoming increasingly inevitable unless decisive action is taken. In a recent conversation with financial journalist David Lynn, Deaton outlined the gravity of the situation and proposed solutions to avoid what could be one of the most significant financial crises in American history. To fully grasp the seriousness of the impending default, we must first understand what the debt ceiling is and why it poses such a threat. The debt ceiling refers to the maximum amount of money that the U.S. Treasury can borrow to cover expenses that Congress has already approved. When this limit is reached, the government must either raise the ceiling or face the consequences of not being able to fund its obligations. In recent years, political gridlock has made raising the debt ceiling a contentious issue. As the national debt climbs over $31 trillion, each new debate about raising the ceiling seems to bring us closer to the brink of default. According to Deaton, the stakes have never been higher. The nation faces the painful prospect of a fallout that could affect not only the economy but the lives of millions of Americans. A U.S. debt default would send shockwaves through the global economy, destabilizing financial markets and eroding trust in America's creditworthiness. The domino effect could cause interest rates to spike, investments to plummet, and create uncertainty in households and businesses alike. Deaton points out that a default would not only harm economic growth but also impact critical programs like Social Security and Medicare. With so many lives at stake, the question arises: how do we avoid such a catastrophic scenario? According to Deaton, the route to averting a debt default lies in bipartisan cooperation and fiscal responsibility. Leaders from both sides of the aisle must recognize that putting politics aside in favor of a long-term solution is essential. The U.S. government must adopt a more disciplined approach to budgeting, focusing not just on cutting spending but also on finding new sources of revenue. Additionally, Deaton emphasizes the importance of restructuring how we think about the national debt. Instead of viewing it solely as a burden, he advocates for strategies that leverage the debt to stimulate economic growth. This includes investment in infrastructure, technology, and education, which could ultimately yield higher returns for the country. To truly address the looming crisis, Deaton believes we need a paradigm shift in how we approach fiscal policy. This requires transparency in government spending and a commitment to addressing the root causes of our national debt. Politicians must be held accountable for their decisions, and the public must become more engaged in the conversation around economic policy. The potential for a U.S. debt default is a pressing issue that cannot be ignored. As John Deaton eloquently pointed out in his discussion with David Lynn, the only way to stop this impending crisis is through bipartisan leadership and a commitment to fostering a robust economy. By rethinking our approach to national debt and focusing on long-term growth, we can safeguard the future of the American economy and avoid the disastrous consequences of default. The time for action is now. It's up to our leaders and citizens alike to advocate for responsible fiscal policies to ensure that the U.S. remains a pillar of economic stability on the global stage. The road ahead may be challenging, but with collective effort and sound decision-making, it is one we can travel together. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: Dinar Recaps.